Good morning, everybody. Ambassador Kosh coming at you with another work video. And for those of you who follow me on Twitter, we're going to do a little mini series this week or anything leading up to Thanksgiving. And just a heads up to everybody, I will be taking Thursday and Friday off and everything to celebrate the holiday with my family. So, to all of you and everything who follow me on Facebook and on Facebook, on Twitter and on my channel and everything, I just want to wish you all an early happy Thanksgiving for those of you who celebrate the holiday. For those of you who may not, just enjoy, have a good weekend. But this series over the next couple days and everything is going to be turkey and time travel. And in the pop culture of the 1980s, time travel was a very predominant theme within several movies, and it was based around a few franchises. And just a little history on the whole time travel genre. Honestly, time travel has been a concept, especially within science fiction, that has been very predominant. One of the earliest stories and anything that we have that was written by a very well-known author of his time, and even nowadays is H.G. Wells' The Time Machine. And it sparked a lot of imagination. It still continues to spark imagination within our culture. And honestly, I think it's one of the really interesting science fiction genres that could still perceivably be brought into real life existence. But what you had in the 1980s was this genre of movies that were very predominant. You had 2 or 3 franchises that were based around this whole idea of time travel. And even before the 1980s, time travel was a subject that was discussed and used as a plot device or anything, particularly in the original Star Trek series, TOS. But leaping forward a few years or anything, most everybody knows one of the big franchises in the 80s was the Back to the Future franchise headed by Steven Spielberg and Robert Zemeckis. And I think what you have in the movie, the first Back to the Future movie, is a very well done, very well crafted time travel story, and it's one that it's not super heavy as with some time travel stories that have been done throughout the years. It doesn't take itself too seriously, but at the same time, it does have some dramatic weight to it. It has humor, but it has a dramatic tone to it because you're dealing with one family's ultimate fate, in particular the McFly family. And what you see in Back to the Future is you have this very quirky kind of oddball scientist and Doc Brown, Dr. Emmett Brown, played I would say honestly very well by Christopher Lloyd. And you have this very oddball, kind of odd duck scientist who finally has cracked the code on how to do time travel, how to travel through time and do it efficiently. And I think, honestly, in light of what has happened over the last several years, the idea of using the DeLorean of all vehicles as a time machine was actually kind of an ingenious one, because the whole concept behind the DeLorean, the guy who built it himself, he himself was kind of an oddball, and you have this portrayal by Christopher Lloyd of an oddball scientist using a DeLorean for his time machine. It's kind of an interesting mesh of 2 very oddball individuals and 2 very oddball minds coming together and creating something really iconic and really, really cool. Because even nowadays, when you think of time travel stories, you think of the DeLorean. And I think that is something that has been very inspiring for a lot of other artists and directors and so on throughout the decades. And I will say, Back to the Future, particularly the first one, has held up remarkably well. And Honestly, I think around the holidays, it's a series of movies that people will still watch. I remember when I was a kid, they would run certain series of movies on TV and on cable and everything. And Back to the Future was one of those series of movies that was run quite a bit. And I think particularly in the '90s, after the Back to the Future trilogy was over, you would have different cable stations and everything that would run Back to the Future 1, 2, and 3 on TV, and it was a good series of movies for the family to watch together because it wasn't overtly violent. There wasn't a lot of language, and even for they would do television edits of the Back to the Future movies because there was some swearing in them. But all in all, even if you watch them on DVD or Blu-ray, this is something you can watch with your kids and you say, okay, you hear what they said, you don't say it. That's honestly what happened with me when I was a kid is you would hear swearing in movies, and my mom and my dad and my grandmother, when her and my mother were raising me, would say, okay, you hear what they said in the movie? Yeah. You don't say it. I'm like, okay, all right, I won't say it. At least not until I'm old enough to say it and you can't do anything. But I think Back to the Future honestly has held up remarkably well. And I think it is something that very much a family can sit down together as a family and watch and enjoy. Or it's something you can just have playing in the background. And it's something that can be shared as a family. I wouldn't say that it's specifically a Thanksgiving themed movie by any means. It's not. It's a time travel story. It's a science fiction story. But I think it's honestly a very family oriented series that deals with the concepts of family in a very profound way because you have Marty, who's kind of this loner kid who's got the cute girlfriend and everything, but he's kind of an oddball. He's kind of an odd duck himself, and his family has kind of hit the skids in the matter of speaking because his father is still stuck in this state of mind. And what ends up happening is you have Marty travel back in time and everything just by sheer accident. He travels back in time and everything, and he ends up in the era where his mother and his father are going to meet. And I think the theme of family is very strong because what Marty ends up doing ultimately is he ends up changing the fortune of his family for the better because he has an influence on his father and unintentionally has an influence on his mother. And I won't go into it here, but there's the whole scene where they're at the school dance and Marty and his mom, Lorraine, are sitting in the car and she leans in to kiss him and she's like, okay, this wasn't right. This is like kissing my brother. And you have the iconic moment where Biff is trying to assault Lorraine and Marty's father finally comes out. He builds up the nerve and everything, and he cold cocks, downright decks Biff. And Lorraine's very attracted to that. And ultimately, Marty is the impetus for his father's attitude changing and his father being much more assertive and much more outgoing in life and inspiring him to become this very successful and profitable writer, an author. And he uses that whole situation with his son coming back in time, even though he doesn't realize it. And this is one plot hole that I would really love Steven Spielberg or Robert Zemeckis to explain. Why don't Lorraine and oh, for heaven's sakes, Marty's father remember that it was Marty that they met in the past when they were kids? Now, I guess you could explain it one way, that it was so long ago that their memory has kind of faded and they don't recall that they did meet Marty when he was a teenager and what have you. But I think honestly, I think that's as good as a reason as any. But they remember the fact, if we ever have a son, let's name him Marty. And everything. And that's just kind of another way of Marty influencing the future for the better. Okay, actually, I stand corrected. Marty doesn't say name your son Marty. But what he does say is, if you have a son years down the road and he accidentally sets the rug on fire, don't be too hard on him. But what Lorraine says is, Marty, such a nice name. And ultimately, they end up naming their sons, Michael J. Fox's character, Marty. And I guess we could assume that they didn't come down too hard on Marty when he did set that rug on fire, or maybe no, because he has to set the rug on fire. That's already something that's going to happen. But honestly, I think the whole time travel genre of the 80s, and even the little bit that's been done in previous and subsequent years, has been very well done. And I think what Robert Zemeckis and Steven Spielberg did with that one movie, and even the other two movies, was create a very cohesive and very well done time travel story. And even though there are some people who don't particularly care for Back to the Future Part 2, now personally, my whole outlook, my whole perspective on the Back to the Future trilogy, I like the first one very well. I love number 3 more so because I've always been a fan of Westerns, and this is honestly a really cool mashup, and I won't go into a full, you know what, this is time travel. We're going to talk about time travel in these videos, so we'll go ahead and we'll touch on 3. I love the idea of a time travel story mixed with a Western, and it's done very kind of tongue-in-cheek, because they realize that this is a story that takes place in the Old West, but it's the Old West of a very specific area, Hill Valley, where the whole Back to the Future story takes place. It's almost like Hill Valley is like an epicenter for temporal activity, I guess you could say, in a manner of speaking. But honestly, 3 is my favorite. Number 1 is right behind it. Number 2 is at the bottom of my list. Now, if y'all have a different opinion on this, share it in the comments below and everything, and let me know. But honestly, Back to the Future is still one of my favorite movie series. It's a beautiful movie to look at and everything, especially if you can find it on Blu-ray or 4K. I don't know if they have done a 4K release of it yet. Again, if y'all know if they have, let me know. But I know this is going to be kind of a shorter video, but honestly, there's been so much that's already been said about Back to the Future. But I think, honestly, it's a good, clean, fun, entertaining movie and series of movies. And I know I've said this several times now, it holds up remarkably well, considering the fact that it was done in the 1980s. The effects hold up, the story holds up, and the story still resonates with a lot of people, because I know they touch on this in Avengers Endgame and everything, because they say, are you basing all your theory on time travel off Back to the Future and other movies of that sort? And Paul Rudd's character, Ant-Man, says, no, but yeah. And I think the fact that they reference Back to the Future, the Back to the Future movies in Avengers Endgame, is honestly kind of a cool little callback to the franchise, because it has had such an influence on popular culture and the film genre in general. So, but anyway, guys, that's all I've got for you today. As always, if you're liking what I'm doing, share, definitely share these. The more my videos get shared, the more they reach people, and the more my channel will grow. I am in the low 50s on subscribers right now. I would like to at least get to 60 at some point. I do want to address one thing. I know a lot of people are kind of concerned with what's going on with the whole COPPA and FTC regulations that might be coming down. I don't know how this is going to affect my channel, if it even is. But my channel is not going to go anywhere for the foreseeable future until somebody says you're doing something you shouldn't be. I will continue this channel until they tell me I can't. I don't think I can understand where people are concerned. I can understand where there are worries and reservations about how what these regulations are going to be coming down are going to affect YouTube and and independent content creators. But at the same time, as most of you know, I'm a person of faith, and I believe that if God has inspired me to start this channel, and even if you're not a Christian, if you've been inspired by this to start your channel, I'm obviously taking this from a Christian perspective. God inspired me to start this channel, not to just talk about pop culture, but to talk about other topics and everything. But I know I may be getting a little heavy here, but I believe God inspired me, didn't command me, but He gave me the inspiration to start this channel. Then I like to believe that whatever may come down the road, He'll have the last word on it. So, anyways, as always, thank you for watching. Like, share, subscribe, comment, and I will talk to you all later. This is Ambassador Kosh, signing off.